All right, these are a couple clinical pearls that I found in practice to be amazingly successful and can be what's called a deal breaker in any chronic injury case. Okay, there are two places in the body that does not have muscle supporting the joint. One is the tibia-fibula joint. So the tibia is right here, the fibula is right there. And as you can see, there's no real muscle going over this joint. So for instance, with the knee, we have the hamstring, we have the gastrocnemius, I have the sartorius, I have the gracilis, I have all these muscles crossing the joint and supporting the knee. So if I were to have sprained or tore my ACL, I still have support there. But in this joint right here, if we tear these ligaments, the body's ability to produce stabilization is totally impaired. So think of that domino set. If that first domino can't go down, what happens to the whole? Nothing, all right? So we need that first domino to go down. So there's some things we can do to actually heal this. And it's interesting to note, the main communication that happens here is through these ligaments. And if a ligament is stretched, we're going to have poor communication back to the brain. So think of a ligament as like a guitar string. If that guitar string is really loose and we strum it, no music. All right? If we tighten it up and put it back in tune, then we have communication, we have movement. And that's the overall goal. All right, next, our cranials. Dr. Upledger, an osteopathic physician, did dissection on about 190 different bodies. And what he found is that there in one suture, there are more receptors in one suture than everywhere else in the whole body combined. That's powerful because receptors provide stimulation to the brain, provide nutrition, provide stimulation, right? That's super important. So if we have a trauma, whether it be birth, an injury, a car accident, the body's ability for these bones to move is totally shut down, and this can impair total systemic weakness throughout the body when we do a neurological test. Not to mention the sphenoid bone makes up the base of where the anterior pituitary sits in the cella turcica. Through chewing and breathing, the pituitary is actually milked. So the majority of our hormones come from that milking process. So our ability to make growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and these releasing hormones that go throughout the whole body is impaired. So by just fixing some of these bones, you can see a systemic hormonal improvement. Pretty amazing. Yeah, so a suture, for instance, we have this coronal suture right here. We adjust these temporal bones. We can the occiput, you see the sphenoid right here. We do an adjustment that actually goes through the mouth to actually affect that bone. It's pretty cool. I've had patients where you adjust that, you assess it, and then like the lights turn back on. It's pretty amazing. All right, again, so Dr. Robert Sapolsky, PhD, stress physiologist, researcher at Stanford. Amazing what he found, that stress essentially eats away at the brain, especially the areas of the hippocampus. So addressing the underlying stress will keep you from being this guy here. All right. So again, to keep it simple here, what we're looking at, maybe a little complex, this is our stress physiology pathways from the adrenal glands. Okay, red is our stress pathways. Purple is our female hormone pathways. Blue are our androgen pathways. Stress response occurs, watch what happens to the red. We have more stress, we have more breakdown and less build-up. So the goal is to address the stress so we can create more anabolic hormone production and less catabolic. That's the overall goal. And it's important to note, the precursors for all of our hormones come from cholesterol. So healthy animal protein and fat sources is key for all the raw material to make this happen. So to simplify that again, we have our hormonal pools. We have stress hormones, and we have anti-aging or building hormones. Stress occurs that we do not address. Increased stress, decreased growth hormones. So the goal really is to address that so we can create balance. All right, next topic here. Here's our brain. Again, we have a phenomenon called hemisphericity, where one brain can become more dominant than the other. So the whole goal we're doing is to create balance in the body. So as you can see, if we have a hemisphericity here, we're going to have imbalance in the left brain and the right brain. So watch what happens here. You have two guys. One has a balanced brain, one has a hemisphericity. And you can see the body's ability to burn fat for energy, for our digestive system to work, is totally impaired. So let's talk about that. So we have our sympathetic nervous system over here, and we have our parasympathetic. Sympathetic is the gas. It's the fight or flight. The parasympathetic is the rest, the digest, the healing part of the nervous system. So we notice with the parasympathetic, this mainly originates from the brainstem. Cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10, and primarily the vagus nerve and some of our pelvic nerves. These affect all of our organs. And then we have the sympathetic, which then affect the spinal column and which go out to all of our muscles. So if we're eating poorly, eating glutinous, consuming, let's say, coffee with mycotoxins in it, we're going to see inflammation, especially in the areas of the intestines and digestive tract. We have what's called a viscerosomatic reflex. Break it down. Visceral organ.
For sound quality, my friend.
Sure. Visceral organ. So follow the intestine. It comes all the way out here. It reflexes at various ganglions that then go up and affect spinal nerves that can shut down the body's ability to move in the lumbar spine or the pelvis area or in the abdominal area. So now we'll make it a little more simple. Inflammation, fungal infection, food allergens, reflex to various areas of the spine. We correct that not even by doing anything physical or structural, just removing the stressors. Fungal issues, food allergens, various infections. So conclusion here, go bulletproof. It's the low-hanging fruit. Get the diet right. Pull out the major stressors. Eat nutrient-dense foods. They're the easiest ones first. Once you address the chemical stressors, then move on to the physical stressors. Once you've addressed that, you have the foundation then to deal with the emotional stuff. You can, whether it be getting an M-wave or doing EFT or meditating, those are all effective ways to address that. Make sure your body's in balance. Again, if your body absorbs force properly, it's less likely to absorb by the disc, the tendons, and the ligaments, all of these sensitive structures. It's all about the gut, all right? If we have gut issues, we have inflammation in the gut, we're going to have systemic issues throughout the body. You can treat physically, but it's not going to address that. And I'm going to be available all day, probably in the back, doing some demos. If you have any questions for me, we can look at your case individually and assess what's going on. So in summary here, eat well, move well, think well. The whole goal is health is not a matter of chance, but a matter of choice. It's really in your hands. You have the control. I hope some of the information I've given you guys today has empowered you and will allow you to take your health to a new level. Thank you for your time, and any questions? Yes?
Do you have an opinion on what type of water is the most healthy for people to drink?
What kind of water?
Yeah.
I like a water that's obviously fluoride-free. Okay, repeat the question. What kind of water do I recommend? I recommend a water that's relatively neutral. I like San Pellegrino. You can do Fuji, any of those waters. I have a reverse osmosis filter in my house, and I add a little bit of high-quality Himalayan sea salt just to keep the total dissolved solvents around 200. Gives active minerals in the water as well. And if you're drinking and you're constantly drinking, you never catch your thirst, it's because the water is devoid of minerals. A pinch of sea salt can really help neutralize that. Yes?
Does the body distinguish between stress that you like say rock climbing, versus stress from something that's bothering you, like muzzle?
Well, of course. I mean, there's eustress, right? And there's distress. Again, the healthier the body is, the better ability it has to adapt, right? An elderly man walking 2 miles, he may be so sore the next day where it may take someone running a marathon to feel that same kind of stress. So the healthier you are, the more you can adapt. Yes?
You said that there's cortisol that stores parts of the brain. Is there a way to reverse that?
Absolutely. The one thing I recommend is getting an adrenal test. That's a great way to look at your cortisol rhythm. And there are different things you can do, different nutrients like phosphorylated serine, making the diet and lifestyle changes. And I work with patients all over the country running these tests, so we can look and see and create protocols to fix, work on the lifestyle, which is always the foundation, use supplements to fix these, whether it's adaptogenic nutrients or herbs and supplements to help. Yes?
I have a question.
Yes?
You said one of the things is to look at the gut. That's your third recommendation. What kind of things can a person do to look at the gut?
All right, great question. So when it comes to the gut, I'm a big fan of looking or running a stool test, because you can find these big infections, right? Whether it's an Entamoeba histolytica or a chronic fungal or bacterial infection, these guys can be energy zombies. If you fix that, you give the hormonal pools a chance to be more anabolic and less destructive. So running a stool test can be great, and we do that with patients all the time too, which is awesome. You can see it. We either do antibiotic or herbal protocols to fix that as well. Any other questions? Great, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
And before you leave, you did hard math coherence technique right before you spoke.
Yes.
Did it affect your speech?
I feel pretty good. I just made the talk last night, so didn't have enough time to really get it down, but I feel pretty good.
So some stress response, but not like a huge difference.
No, I felt like you said, you could think about what you were saying next a little bit better, which is reacting. And I think my arms were pretty well.
Sounds placebo.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. If you're interested in what's going on in your gut, in the demo section in the other bar, we have Ubiome, which is an Indiegogo campaign that does genetic sequencing of what's in your poop.